idols. They had idols for every little thing. Every little thing. And they worshiped the Nile. It was not only their livelihood, it's the way that they had drinking water, the way they had food, the way they navigated. And then when the Nile would flood, it would fertile the soil around it, where they had fields that could grow crops, amazing crops. And we look at this first plague right here, is the blood of the Nile. And then we also will see that the second plague was frogs. The third was the plague of lice, and the plague of flies, and the plague of livestock, and the plague of the bulls. And it goes on down, and we go to hail was one plague, and this was one plague. And then darkness, and then the last plague that set upon Pharaoh, where it changed his heart. The first plague has great significance because of how they worship, and because of the children that was murdered and thrown into the Nile. It was a sign of punishment. The Egyptian was so paganistic that they worshiped the river, the Nile. And then Pharaoh's daughter, when she found Moses, that she was there to do a worship, to worship the Nile. And so was Pharaoh. He came down to worship. God see how God knew he was going to be there. He knew that Moses could find him there, and he knew that he could do this and show the people that he is the true God. And they named the God of the Nile River Happy. H-A-P-I. Happy was that God of the river. And then they had other names. And then this happy God blessed this river with a woman goddess named Mot, M-A-T. Happy was their God of life, and through this river it gave them life and it gave them sustenance. Manifestations of the God Happy was through other streams of life that they had. The Nile was also their source of transportation and how they fed their livestock. And we know also that that's where they threw the children. And then also in chapter 8, we'll be going through a lot of scripture, and I'll just read through certain parts of scripture. Then the next plague was frogs. Frogs. The Egyptian worshipped a frog. It was their god of fertility. And then it says, he was sending Moses to Pharaoh again, and if thou refuse, in verse 2 it says, if thou refuse to let them go, behold, I will smite all thy borders with frogs. And the river shall bring forth frogs abundantly, which shall go up and come into the house, and into thy bedchamber, and upon thy bed, and into the house of thy servants, and upon the people, and into thy ovens, and into thy kneading troughs, or kneading bowls. A big trough that they have where they knead their bread together to make their bread. And then so forth. He hardened his heart, and he would not let them go. And so these frogs come everywhere. They were everywhere. They were just as what God said they would be, and it was just a torment of the people. And Pharaoh called for Moses in verse 8 and Aaron and said, entreat the Lord that he may take away the frogs from me and from my people, and I will let the people go, that they may do sacrifice unto your Lord. Then, what does Moses do? He does. He goes and he cries to God. And instead of the frogs to be removed, they died there in such a stench. And after they got that, guess what? Pharaoh hardened his heart again. He hardened his heart again to the people and would not let them go. So the next plague was lice. In some translations it says gnats, but I believe it was lice. And it said, the plague of lice, which starts in verse 16, and the Lord said unto Moses, saying to Aaron, stretch out thy rod and smite the dust of the land. Now he does not give Pharaoh a warning on this. It just happened. God told them to go and do it, and they go do it. And they did so, for Aaron stretched out his hand with his rod and smote the dust of the earth, and it became lice in man and in beast, and all the dust of the land became lice throughout all the land of Egypt. And the magicians did so with their enchantments to bring forth lice, but they could not. So there were lice upon man and upon beast. And then the magician said to Pharaoh, this is the finger of God. And Pharaoh's heart was hardened, and he hearkened not unto them as the Lord had said he would do. Then in verse 22, I will sever in the day that the land of Goshen, in which people dwell, that no swarms of flies or lice or whatever shall be there, to the end thou mayest know that I am the Lord in the midst of the earth. And I will put a division between my people. Tomorrow shall this be. The Israelites was living in a place called Goshen there. And he told them that it will not be the same for the Israelites. This is punishment against Pharaoh, and because Pharaoh is the rulers of these people, the Egyptian people, it will come to you. All these plagues will come to you. And then the plague 9, the plague of the death of the beast, where they're known by, in that time, they're known by their possessions of animals, of camels, of horses, donkeys, sheep, goats, all that. That's how they're known by their riches. And then all the beasts, all the animals, the cattle, the livestock, and so on was struck in the land of Egypt, but not in Goshen. They lost their food, their support of that. The Egyptians did. But God held on. He held on to his promise for not letting it happen in Goshen. In 6, the plague of the bulls. That's in chapter 9, starting with verse 8. The plague of the bulls. And it shall become small dust in all the land of Egypt, and shall be a bull breaking forth with blains upon man and upon beast throughout all the land of Egypt. It not only affected man, but it affected their animals, their livestock, their cattle, their donkeys, their horses, the camels, and all that they had. And they took ashes of the furnace and stood before Pharaoh, and Moses sprinkled it upward heaven, and it became a bull breaking forth with blains upon man and upon beasts. And the magicians could not stand before Moses and do anything because they were hurt. They had the bulls upon them. Then again, they tell Pharaoh, hey, this is for real. This is a hand of God that's going on here. Let these people go. Then, how many times have you ever seen hail? Little rain, frozen raindrop. When you see hail and fire falling out of the sky at the same time, lightning and thunder, well, he had me from the first part of the night off in the blood. Especially when you see hail falling down that would kill man or anything that's outside of the shelter, that he warns them that, hey, it will kill any beast that's outside. It will kill any man, any woman, any child that's out from under a shelter. It will kill them. Then yet some didn't believe it, and they perished. And then plague 8 was the plague of the locusts in Exodus chapter 10, starting with verse 12. When he calls forth the locusts after Moses goes to him and says, hey, let my people go. And then again, Pharaoh refuses each time. He refuses. But these locusts come and they devour every green thing that they could be. Everything that, even their crops of rice and wheat and barley, all this was eaten up. The only thing that they did not eat up was what was already that planted had not come up. They totally destroyed Egypt with locusts. How many do y'all remember? I think it was probably in the late 70s when the locusts came. We had an epidemic of locusts in the fields that ate up the corn crop and all. Y'all remember that? I remember going out into the field and see locusts, grasshoppers everywhere, in the peanuts, in the corn. But then they said in 1874 there was a swarm of locusts that come into the western United States that was like dark in the cloud as they would have seen here with all the locusts that God called from the east to come in. And then Pharaoh sends for Moses and Aaron to come quickly, come. That I have sinned. He admits sinning against God for hearkening in his heart and not letting the people go. And he tells Moses, tell your God, please get these things out of here. And Moses goes and he cries to God, and a west wind comes and blows him back out into the Red Sea. All these things that one man, because of his hard-heartedness, it caused conflict on him and his people. We have seen that before. We've seen that in other countries. We've seen that in the Hitler effect, as I call it. Well, one man causes so much conflict and death on a group of people, and on these people, of all people. Then we have the 9th plague, the plague of darkness. The Bible tells us that this plague of darkness was so dark, even if they tried to light a lantern, it would go out. It wouldn't even light. But it was so dark they couldn't see, and it was for 3 days. It was for 3 days. And then, guess what? The people, the Israelites, had lied. They had lied. So you see that darkness is a representation of that sinful life. And so it is so dark. And who is our light? God is our light. He gave light to the Israelites as they were in Goshen. And they saw this. But they said that there was no way, they could not even see in front of each other. That was so dark. And that's something that if you're not going to heaven, that's something that you'll have to face in hell. That darkness, that your loneliness, the torment of fire and heat. And you know what? I truly believe, this is my belief, that while you're in hell, that you're going to remember your loved ones that tried to tell you about Jesus, that prayed for you, and they're up in heaven, and you're in hell, you're in that expanse of torment. But then, with this darkness, it lasted for just a short while. And then come the final plague. But before this plague, God talked with Moses. He said, tell your people that I will come and I will smite the firstborn here in Egypt. And I want you to do this. Tell them that this will change the whole year. That for them to take the lamb, an unblemished lamb or goat, and smite it, and take hyssop and the blood of it to brush against the side post of the door and over the top post. And when I come at midnight, I'll pass over you. Your firstborn won't die. But it's firstborn on everything, the people, the livestock. It got it all. And then I can imagine there in Egypt where this happened, that the crying, the anguish of people losing their loved ones. Can you imagine? Losing your firstborn because you wouldn't adhere to what God told you to do, because you wasn't obedient to God. That went for the Israelites too. But that's because why he told them to take that blood of that unblemished lamb or that goat and brush it up there. And then to eat it. And when to do it. On the 10th day they were to take it. And then on the 14th day of that month they were to brush the hyssop over the doorways. And then God came in the midnight. He came and he smite the firstborn. As we look in chapter 12, Exodus chapter 12, verse 49. Turn there. We need to see this. This is the breaking moment. History tells us that this Pharaoh here was about 49 years of age when this occurs. And it came to pass that at midnight, the Lord smote all the firstborn in the land of Egypt. From the firstborn of Pharaoh that sat on his throne unto the firstborn of the captive that was in the dungeon, and all the firstborn of cattle. And Pharaoh rose up in the night, and he and all his servants and all the Egyptians, and there was a great cry in Egypt, for there was not a house where there was not one dead. And he called for Moses and Aaron by night and said, Rise up and get you forth from among my people, both ye and the children of Israel. Go, serve your Lord. Also take your flocks and your herds, and you have said, Be gone, bless me also. And the Egyptians were urgent upon the people, and they might send them out of the land in haste. For they said, We'll be all dead men. They were ready. Moses, come, get them, go, get out of here. Scratch off, get going, take what you need. And it also says 34, and the people took their dough before it was leavened, their kneading troughs being bound up in their clothes upon their shoulders. And the children of Israel did according to the word of Moses, and they borrowed of the Egyptians jewels of silver and gold and remnants. And then we look down here at 39, and said they baked unleavened cakes and dough, and they brought forth out of Egypt. For it was not leavened, because they was thrust out of Egypt. They was hurried out and could not tarry there. They prepared for themselves any anything. And so now the journey of the children of Israel who dwelt in Egypt was 430 years sojourning. And you know, the Egyptian people said, Here, take this. Whatever you need, take it. Take it. You know, you got to realize too that there was a lot there that no one went on because there were so many deaths in Egypt. So they left with great herds of cattle, great herds of sheep, great herds of goats and camels, all that they needed. They hurried out. Up to the thing about some 600,000. And then we had the Passover that God promised them, and they was obedient, and they lived. Then he came and he smote the firstborn, and then that led to know Pharaoh. Pharaoh knew then that he knew that the God of Moses was God. He knew it was God. He knew that those gods that he had could not do anything or stop. Only thing they could add to the trouble that they were having. It was not a conclusion to it. It was not a good end for them, because God was God. It was too powerful. He showed his strength. He showed his strength. He showed that God was God. And the spoils of the Egyptians in 1236. And the Lord gave the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians, so that they lent to them such things as they required. They would say, all right, yeah, here, take this. Take this bedroll, take this chair. You want another chair? Take that one. Get out of here. Go. As soon as you can get out of here, we're going to be all right. But it says the spoils that they got. And it says right there in the last sentence, and they spoiled the Egyptians. And that right there is what that means right there, that they took what was left over from the dead that had died. It did not belong to anybody. The Egyptians took it because God said, hey, we're going to find favor in you to do this. It's okay. Do this. Carry this with you. The Egyptian people were so glad to see the Israelites go. But yet, they did not convert. The Bible doesn't tell us of anyone converting to be with the Lord. What a bad time, a hard time, an anguish time, a time of great loss of everything. Possessions, animals, livestock, water, because of one man's pride. Because of one man's pride caused great destruction all around. But each little plague, God had a reason for it. It was some type of God that they worshiped, that he showed them that God was not him. The Lord did not want his people to give their hearts and their minds and souls to anything ahead of him. He wanted everyone to know that he was God. He wanted everyone to love him. You know, it tells us in the Bible to love him with all our hearts, mind, and soul. Do we do that? Do we do that? Where we see that Pharaoh could not let the Israelites go because of his pride, even to him admitting to have sinned. But it was the death of his loved one, his son, that really opened up his heart. And going through the hardship of the plagues was heavy on him, and God, God only wanted us to be worshipped. He wanted to be loved, and of all things, he deserved every bit of it. It would be a great loss to us to lose a child. Some of us have already done that, know what that hurt is. But to lose a child because of your stubbornness, your pride, your holiness, that's another thing. A lot of biblical scholars say that Ramses or the Pharaoh would have executed Moses and Aaron the first time they met them. Not those. They say that he would have them executed, beheaded right then and there, that he might even would have swung the sword that cut off Moses' head. But God had planned. It was God's plan when he raised up this child to come and lead the people out of Egypt. And he said in the Bible, it tells us that he made Moses a god unto Pharaoh, so he would not. These scholars. They're so smart, but they don't see just what's in the Bible. So we are in God's plan, God's purpose. And how do you stand in God's obedience and His purpose? How are you doing that? Are you listening to God when He's telling you to do something? Are you doing what He asks you to do? Are you serving God the way you should serve? And going to church is a great big part of that. How many times people will miss church and say, well, I'll catch you next time, God. And I'm going to the lake this weekend. I'm going to a ball game this weekend. I'm going out of town. I'm going to the beach this weekend. But we didn't put God first in that. Where's our love of God? Where's our priority with Him? In Matthew chapter 15, verse 8. I'm going to read it to you. It says, the people draweth nigh to me with their mouths, and honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far away from me. Don't you think it hurts God when we know we should be in church, or we know that we should witness to this person, and we don't do it, and we don't tell our story, we don't let our light shine? Because, sin is darkness. Sin is darkness. God is light. We have a light that shines when we're out. And about people, you ever been around somebody and recognize that they are a Christian person? That's your light shining. That's your light. How bright is your light? This little light of mine. I want a big light of mine. As we stand. Where are you today in your salvation? Where are you?